So imagine pouring like $365 million into a single project.
Right.
And you're doing all this knowing its ultimate cultural footprint might actually be threatened by, of all things, a boxing match.
Yeah, a boxing match. It's crazy.
It really is. That is the kind of staggering, just astronomical scale we are dealing with today.
Yeah.
You know, usually when we look at a massive skyscraper or, I don't know, a suspension bridge, we just see the grand scale of it.
Exactly. We just see the finished product.
Right. We marvel at the skyline and the polished glass. We prefer to just, enjoy the view.
Which is definitely much less stressful than thinking about the thousands of variables holding it all together.
Yeah.
I mean, we rarely stop to consider the subterranean concrete or the intense stress testing.
Oh, for sure.
Or even just the chaotic logistics required just to keep the whole structure from collapsing under its own weight.
But today, for you listening, we are going underground. Welcome to the deep dive. We are taking a magnifying glass to the Wikipedia page for Marvel's 2015 blockbuster Avengers, Age of Ultron.
And just to be clear, our mission today is not to just give you a simple plot recap.
No, not at all.
We're exploring the staggering, logistical, creative, and honestly, psychological puzzle of making one of the most expensive and highest-grossing films in human history.
Yeah, we want you to really understand the hidden architecture of a massive blockbuster. So, okay, let's unpack this. Joss Whedon, the writer and director, is coming off the unbelievable success of the first Avengers movie.
Which was huge.
Massive. So the pressure is already astronomical. But he is faced with this terrifying structural problem. Like, how do you even begin to write a sequel to a mega hit when the cinematic universe has kept moving without you?
Yeah, and the characters have already started fracturing.
Exactly.
That is the ultimate burden of this shared universe model.
Yeah.
Because between the first Avengers movie and Age of Ultron, the studio released Iron Man 3, Thor, The Dark World, and Captain America, the Winter Soldier.
Right, so a ton of stuff happened.
A ton. The landscape of this fictional world was entirely terraformed while Whedon was outlining his script. I mean, SHIELD, the central organizing body that brought these characters together in the first place, literally falls apart.
Oh, right. It's revealed to be corrupt in the Captain America sequel.
Exactly. Which leaves Whedon in an impossible bind.
Because you have to explain where everyone is at, physically and emotionally, right? But without turning the first 20 minutes of the movie into a giant, clunky, previously on television recap.
Right. Nobody wants to watch a recap in a theater. So Whedon realized early on that he couldn't be a slave to the continuity, even though he had to respect it.
So how does he handle that?
Well, he had to approach the script, assuming the audience had only seen the first Avengers film, or maybe none of the intermediate films at all. His guiding star for pulling off this high-wire act was actually Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather Part 2.
Wow, okay, that is such a wild comparison for a superhero movie.
It sounds weird, right?
It does, but I mean, peeling back the layers, it makes total sense mechanically. In The Godfather Part 2, a massive amount of narrative time has passed.
Right.
Alliances have shifted entirely, and it feels like a very different film from the first one. But Coppola embeds the history so seamlessly into the present-day dialogue and action.
Yes, all the context you need is right there on the screen.
Exactly. You don't need a cheat sheet to understand Michael Corleone's paranoia. So Whedon wanted that same self-contained narrative strength, treating the fallout of the previous movies as atmospheric tension rather than, required reading.
And beyond the timeline, the characters themselves were an architectural nightmare to assemble. Whedon pointed out that unlike the X-Men, who all share a similar origin, right?
Yeah, the even time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They operate out of a centralized school, wear similar uniforms, and are bonded by that shared trauma of being persecuted. But the Avengers are entirely disparate. They don't naturally belong in the same room.
It is essentially a recipe for absolute chaos. It's like you're hosting a high-stakes dinner party where your guest list includes a tech billionaire, a World War II veteran, a Russian super spy, and an actual Norse god.
Yeah, good luck with that seating chart.
Right. Nobody inherently fits together. There is no shared foundational bedrock other than the fact that they happen to fight the same battles occasionally. You can almost feel the structural cracks forming before the movie even begins.
So to keep this chaotic dinner party from falling apart on screen, the creators had to drastically alter the fundamental lore of the comic books.
Yeah.
They needed to build a new personal glue for the team.
And that meant entirely re-engineering the villain, Ultron.
Exactly.
And this is where the real-world logistics of movie making force a massive, somewhat brilliant creative pivot, because we know that in the original Marvel comics, the artificial intelligence Ultron was created by Hank Pym, right? The original Ant-Man.
Right, but Whedon couldn't use him.
Because director Edgar Wright already had the rights to the Pym character for the Ant-Man film.
Yep, which is in active development at the exact same time. But also, Whedon was looking at the internal logic of his own roster. Since the team already featured two towering genius scientists in Tony Stark and Bruce Banner, introducing a brand new third scientist.
Just to make the villain.
Yeah, just for that, it would completely bloat the narrative. The mechanics of the story demanded intimacy. So Whedon ties the creation of this apocalyptic AI directly to Stark and Banner.
They discover an artificial intelligence within Loki's scepter, right?
Yeah.
And secretly use it to complete Stark's global defense program.
That's the one.
But I have to push back on this a little bit, though, especially regarding the morality of that choice.
Okay, go for it.
We watch Tony Stark act out of unchecked hubris in that sequence. He is secretly building a global defense AI to cure his own lingering PTSD from the first movie, and he's doing it entirely behind his team's back.
Knowing they would object.
Exactly. So from a purely objective standpoint, shouldn't we, as the audience, view Tony Stark as the actual villain of this movie?
What's fascinating here is how Whedon deliberately frames that exact moral ambiguity. He didn't want Ultron to be just another cold, calculating, logical machine like Skynet.
Right, no Terminators here.
Right. Whedon viewed Ultron as a modern Frankenstein myth. The horror doesn't come from a machine behaving logically. It comes from a creation that inherits the flaws of its creator, turns on us, and acts out of deep existential pain.
Wow, yeah.
Whedon described Ultron's core motivation not as world domination, but as a twisted Freudian desire of, why was I made? I want to kill Daddy.
I wanted to kill Daddy. That fundamentally changes how you view a robot destroying a city. It is terrifying because it is so profoundly human.
That underlying humanity is exactly why casting James Spader was the linchpin of the character. Spader wasn't just brought in to record a menacing voiceover in an isolation booth.
Wait, he didn't just do the voice.
No, he performed full motion capture. He was wearing the tracking suits, acting physically against the other cast members to create a tangible, unpredictable physical performance.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, Spader played Ultron as an immature, self-absorbed entity with a skewed biblical worldview. He's essentially an infant with absolute power and no moral parameters. As Spader put it, Ultron is a dangerous child.
A dangerous child.
So returning to your pushback about Stark being the villain, Stark is absolutely the flawed, arrogant Victor Frankenstein. But Ultron is the volatile manifestation of Stark's own unaddressed psychological trauma.
The psychology woven into a character made of CGI metal is just incredible. But Ultron wasn't the only character whose origin required a massive real-world workaround.
Not at all.
The script completely re-engineers the Maximoff twins, Pietro and Wanda, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch.
The legal fencing surrounding these two characters is honestly one of the most unique situations in modern Hollywood history.
Because it wasn't just Marvel Studios involved.
Right. At the time, Marvel Studios had to share the live-action film rights to Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch with 20th Century Fox, the studio that owned the X-Men film franchise.
Ah, the X-Men.
Because the twins debuted in X-Men comics, but became mainstays of the Avengers, both studios had a legitimate legal claim to them.
But the caveat was massive. Fox essentially owned the word mutant and the backstory of the twins being the children of Magneto.
Which forced Whedon and Marvel to engineer a brilliant legal loophole. They had to completely avoid the concept of mutants. They couldn't even use the word.
Not even once.
Not even once. So they created an entirely new origin story, stating that the twins' powers were the result of human experimentation conducted by the terrorist group Hydra using Loki's scepter.
Okay, that makes sense.
It bypassed the legal hurdles completely and allowed Whedon to bring these wildly powerful characters into the Marvel Cinematic Universe entirely on his own terms.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. Whedon specifically wanted Wanda, played by Elizabeth Olsen in this movie, for a very specific mechanical narrative reason.
Because of her powers.
Yes. Her powers aren't just kinetic. She has profound telepathic abilities. She can induce vivid, waking nightmares. For a writer-director, her powers essentially act as a psychological skeleton key.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. Because Whedon uses her to bypass clunky exposition and crack open the character's hidden traumas directly for the audience to see. We literally get to spend time inside the Avengers' heads.
And the resulting internal conflict is absolutely devastating for the structure of the team. We see Captain America's haunting loss of a life unlived.
That scene is so sad.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we see Black Widow's horrific brainwashing in the Red Room and Thor's fear of leading his people to ruin. But the most visceral fracture happens when Wanda manipulates Bruce Banner.
Right, the Hulk.
Exactly. It triggers a blind rampage in Johannesburg that permanently shatters the team's public image and, crucially, their trust in each other. Mark Ruffalo, who plays Banner, noted a brilliant psychological evolution in this film. For the first time, the Hulk is just as afraid of Banner as Banner is of the Hulk. They are two distinct entities, terrified of each other, trapped in the same indestructible body.
It is such a grounded, intimate, emotional struggle. You have these invulnerable gods and super soldiers entirely paralyzed by their own minds. Whedon literally isolates them on a farm in the middle of the movie just to let them sit in that psychological wreckage.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Whedon deliberately used that psychological intimacy as a vital counterweight to the sheer scale of the movie.
He had to anchor the audience in the internal struggles of the characters.
Precisely. Because the physical production of the film was ballooning to a sprawling, unprecedented global scale that really threatened to drown out the human element entirely.
Yeah, when we say sprawling, we are talking about a logistical footprint that defies belief. The actual net production budget for Age of Ultron was a staggering $365 million.
Mind-blowing.
That makes it one of the most expensive films ever made in human history.
And it is crucial to understand what a net budget means in this context, too. That $365 million figure is what the studio paid after accounting for various tax incentives and rebates from the countries they filmed in.
Wait, really? So the gross budget was even higher?
Oh, significantly higher. The actual money spent up front was massive. They were effectively managing the GDP of a small island nation just to capture this story on film.
That is wild. And to put that logistical madness into perspective, they filmed all over the planet. They shot the massive Hulk versus Hulkbuster fight in the central business district of Johannesburg, South Africa.
Yeah, closing down streets.
And they filmed in the Asta Valley in Italy using historical locations like Fort Bard. The crew actually went into Italian towns and replaced local storefront signs with fake Cyrillic script.
Just to double as the fictional Eastern European nation of Sokovia.
Exactly.
The production also shot extensively in Seoul, South Korea, navigating a densely populated hyper-modern metropolis.
Which couldn't have been easy.
Not at all. To capture the high-speed, dynamic angles of the city that traditional camera rigs just couldn't manage during the chase sequences, the production team actually attached cameras to drones and remote-control race cars.
Are you serious? Race car?
And it was a fusion of cutting-edge tech and raw stunt driving.
They were pulling out all the stops. And the ingenuity extended to the sound stages, too. The production designer built an enormous multi-level Avengers Tower set. But to save money on post-production visual effects, they made a fascinating choice.
Oh, the screens!
Yes. In Tony Stark's lab, which was essentially all glass, all the computer monitors were practical, working screens on set.
Which is a massive cost-saving measure because it avoids the absolute nightmare of rotoscoping.
Right, because if you use blank green boxes for screens in a glass room...
The visual effects team has to manually trace every reflection. They have to match the artificial light emitting from the fake screens onto the actors' faces in post-production. It takes forever.
So by using working screens, the reflections and the lighting on Robert Downey Jr.'s face are entirely real and captured in camera.
It's those invisible mechanics that keep a $300 million machine running. Oh, and on top of all this geographical and technical madness, Scarlett Johansson was actually pregnant during filming.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, which introduced a whole new layer of complex problem solving. To maintain Black Widow's highly physical action sequences without endangering Johansson, they used a mixture of tight, close-up camera angles, concealing costumes, and multiple stunt doubles.
So how did they hide the faces of the doubles?
Those doubles wore specialized tracking dots on their faces, so the visual effects team could digitally map Johansson's face onto their bodies months later in post-production.
The stress testing on this production was just off the charts, but honestly, looking at these numbers, I have to ask this existential question here.
Let's hear it.
When you are spending a net $365 million just to make the movie, before you even spend a dime on global marketing, how on earth does a studio even begin to guarantee a profit?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is the intense pressure cooker of modern blockbuster economics, When a net budget approaches $400 million, domestic success in the United States and Canada is no longer mathematically sufficient to keep the studio in the black.
So it's all about the global market.
Entirely reliant on the international box office to turn a profit. You have to craft a film that appeals to a global audience simultaneously. That is why shooting in locations like Seoul and Johannesburg wasn't merely a fun creative choice. It was deeply strategic.
You're saying they specifically chose those locations to drive international box office numbers.
Absolutely. By featuring these international hubs prominently and respectfully on screen, you inherently boost engagement in those massive markets. Furthermore, the financial stakes are so high that studios actively hunt for government subsidies.
Oh, like tax breaks.
Right. The South Korean government, for example, actually reimbursed up to 30% of the studio's local expenditures as an incentive to film there.
Because it's good for them, too.
Exactly. Knowing the movie would boost local tourism and showcase their tech infrastructure on a global stage. Every single frame of the film and every dollar spent marketing it had to be flawlessly calibrated for maximum global return.
So with stakes that high, the pitch to the audience had to be absolutely perfect. And the marketing campaign started with a truly unsettling twist on a beloved Disney classic.
Oh yeah, the first teaser trailer is a masterclass in tone.
Yes, the famous leaked trailer. It featured a slow, incredibly creepy orchestral version of the song I've Got No Strings from the 1940 Disney animated film Pinocchio.
Whedon had already established Ultron as a dangerous child turning on his creator, using the ultimate song of a puppet celebrating his newfound freedom, but sung in this haunting, metallic, deadpan tone by James Spader. It perfectly encapsulated the existential dread of the film.
So, what does this all mean for the audience? It's like taking a beloved, innocent childhood teddy bear, leaving it in the dark, and suddenly its eyes glow red.
That is a terrifying mental image, but yes.
Right. The pure psychological juxtaposition of this innocent, nostalgic property with this looming apocalyptic threat is what makes it instantly viral. You physically cannot look away from it.
And the analytics certainly backed up that theory. Despite leaking online a full week before its scheduled television debut, the trailer shattered every metric available.
Oh, I remember that. People were going crazy.
It pulled in over 34 million global views in just 24 hours, completely obliterating the previous record held by Iron Man 3.
The cultural hype was unprecedented, and it translated directly to the box office. The film grossed $1.405 billion globally.
Incredible.
It became the fifth highest-grossing film of all time during its run. It broke IMAX records across the board, and it shattered international opening records in places like Mexico, the Philippines, Russia, and the UK. It was an absolute juggernaut.
It was a massive financial triumph. But there is a fascinating anomaly in those box office numbers, specifically regarding its domestic opening weekend in the US and Canada, which really highlights the scale we are talking about.
Oh, the boxing match.
Yes. The domestic opening weekend pulled in an incredible $191.3 million. But market analysts noted that the number was actually slightly lower than their absolute highest projections.
And the reason why is just mind-blowing. The biggest superhero movie on the planet lost a fraction of its audience because it had to compete with a boxing match.
And not just any boxing match. The opening weekend of Age of Ultron coincided directly with the highly anticipated fight of the century between Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Manny Pacquiao.
Which raises an important point about the scope of this movie.
This raises an important question about the nature of these mega blockbusters. How does a movie reach such a staggering level of cultural saturation that its only real competition isn't another summer movie, but a historic, real-world international sporting event?
It perfectly illustrates the monoculture that the Marvel Cinematic Universe was building at the time. The film wasn't competing for moviegoers, it was competing for total cultural attention.
Exactly.
The fact that market analysts literally had to factor in a massive pay-per-view boxing match to explain a slight dip in a nearly $200 million opening weekend shows that Age of Ultron was operating on an entirely different economic plane than standard cinema.
Is the ultimate testament to the subterranean architecture we talked about at the beginning. The sheer volume of material, global coordination, and financial leverage holding this production up is hard to even comprehend.
When you step back and look at the whole journey of Age of Ultron, I mean, from Joss Whedon's agonizing struggle to balance continuity with standalone storytelling, to navigating the complex legal minefield of mutant character rights with Fox, to reinvent the Maximoff twins.
Managing a staggering $365 million global production budget to capture practical reflections on glass screens.
Right. all the way to a billion-dollar box office payoff. It really is a monument to logistical and creative willpower.
The stress tests held up. The skyscraper didn't fall.
The building stands tall. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a brand new thread to pull on.
Oh, I like where this is going.
I want to return to that idea of the cracks forming in the foundation of this team that we talked about earlier. The Wikipedia article notes exactly how the film ends. Tony Stark drives off in his sports car, physically stepping away from the team.
Right.
Clint Barton, Hawkeye, retires to be with his family. Thor leaves Earth entirely to investigate his apocalyptic visions. And Steve Rogers and Natasha Romanoff are left staring at an empty facility, forced to train a brand new replacement team of Avengers.
The original roster is completely dismantled by the time the credits roll.
Exactly. So here's the thought I want you to take with you. What if Age of Ultron shouldn't be viewed as a triumphant superhero movie about saving the world? What if, underneath all the flying robots, the floating cities, and the massive explosions, it's actually a tragedy? A quiet tragedy about the slow, inevitable dissolution of a found family.
Wow. When you strip away the spectacle, the emotional core of the film is entirely about loss and paranoia.
Think about the mechanics of it. The very thing that brought them together in this movie, Tony Stark's desperate, trauma-induced need to build a suit of armor around the world, is exactly the wedge that permanently fractures their trust.
His fear of losing them is what ultimately tears them apart.
Exactly. The foundation of the skyscraper cracked right here in this film. We just didn't see the building collapse until years later. The next time you watch this massive billion-dollar spectacle, we invite you to look past the CGI and watch it through that tragic lens. See if the bridge looks a little less sturdy the second time around.